Hello, America. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here across the nation. Delighted to have you. I hope it's warm where you are, because it is not warm where I am, and it is well warmer for where I am than it is where a lot of you are listening. It's just cold out there. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, 877-973-7425. You can text Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast. Follow me on social media, all that great stuff. One programming note for you out of the gate. I have a special guest. I rarely have guests on this program. I like it to be you and me, but this one's worth it. Joel Kaplan is going to join me at the top of the second hour. Who is Joel Kaplan? He is the head of Meta Global Policy. He is the man who convinced Mark Zuckerberg to ditch the fact-checking standards and policies at Facebook. And I'm going to talk to him about those changes and the impact on ordinary users and on me and on my friends who are chefs who want to demonstrate how to sharpen a knife or use a knife on Instagram, and the algorithm punishes them for it. We're going to talk about all that stuff at the top of the next hour. Big changes, Facebook. The left, by the way, is losing it over the Facebook changes. In fact, there was an actual headline from NBC News this morning that with these changes at Facebook, Meta will allow you to refer to a trans person as mentally ill. I had no idea you couldn't do that last week, but apparently you'd get punished in the algorithm. Now you're allowed to say that a trans person might be mentally ill. Yeah, okay. So the left is upset. The progressives, by the way, are illiberal. They're not liberal. They're illiberal. They do not like free speech. We'll get to that with Joel Kaplan at the top of the next hour. We've got to begin, though, the other thing the left is losing their mind on. My goodness. I support buying Greenland. Greenland is actually Iceland. Iceland is green. Iceland's actually black with all the volcanic sand. But nonetheless, I digress. Greenland, we should buy it. Now, we should not buy Canada because Canadians are trash. I'm teasing. Quebecers are trash. Canadians are fine people, eh? I was at a hockey game the other night, sitting by some Calgary Flames fans, eh? And they were just wonderful human beings. Fantastic people. And they literally ended every sentence with eh. They eat poutine, which is a little weird, but Alberta is basically Texas North. The problem with Canada, though, is it's a giant welfare state. The median income of every Canadian province is less than the median income of the state of Mississippi, the poorest of the American states. God bless you, Mississippi. I love you. You are wealthy people compared to Canadians. Mississippi, by the way, I'm on the air now across Mississippi, north to south, everywhere. I'm on in Tupelo. I'm on in Summit. I'm on in Learned, Mississippi, where my sister lives. I'm on in Starkville, where my niece lives. I'm on all over Mississippi. And Mississippi, statistically, according to GDP, has the lowest GDP in the nation. And the GDP of Alberta, where Calgary is actually higher than Mississippi. However, the median income in Alberta, Canada, is less than that of Mississippi. We don't want Canada to be in the United States. It would be a massive welfare suck. It would be unbelievably bankrupting to the United States to have to bring in a bunch of poor Canadians who think they're better than us, number one, and think they're richer than us when they're actually poorer than the poorest people in Mississippi. But the media is losing their mind on this. I mean, genuinely, they're losing their minds on this. Let's start with Maggie Haberman from the New York Times with Anderson Cooper last night on CNN.
He also keeps talking about Canada as a 51st state. That is clearly much more of a troll and sort of a dominance play. But in terms of Trump talking about military action, or at least not ruling it out, as Caitlin said, that caught a lot of people by surprise. It's not clear if that's actually something he's thinking about or something he said because he was quite visibly in a pretty bad mood during this press conference. I think primarily because of the legal challenges that he's facing this week in the New York criminal case and with the possibility of the Jack Smith report and the documents, federal case getting released.
That's Maggie Haberman. But then there's Ashley Allison on CNN.
asked Donald Trump about using military force. And when he did, he started calling people like Liz Cheney warmongers. And now he's saying he's not opposed to using military force to take over Greenland. And Panama. That is completely contradictory to what he was saying in the election. Sure. And it's highly problematic. And that is why I think we should take the blame off of the Greenland thing to stay there and put it at Scott's feet now.
Okay. I'm sorry I played something from Abby Phillips' show. I should have known better. But then, of course, you have poor Joy Reid, who just is melting down.
Chaos and the collapse of the NATO alliance at the hands of the United States has been Russia's long-sought goal. And with this Greenland gambit, Trump is playing right into their hands. Surprise, surprise. And Putin doesn't even have to rely on just Trump to make his NATO-hating dreams come true. He's also getting an assist from Elon Musk. Having purchased the next U.S. president for $200 million, the world's richest billionaire seems to want to control the whole entire world, openly tinkering with governments, trying to duplicate his success in the U.S. by making all of Europe right-wing.
I'm sorry. We are all profoundly dumber for having listened to that idiot. The reasonable voice in all of this is, of all things, John Fetterman, senator from Pennsylvania.
Talk about like there's a lot of talk about Greenland, for example. Now, and I know there's a lot of freakouts, and of course I would never support taking it by force. But I do think I do think it's a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it and whether just buying it outright. I mean, if anyone think that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana purchase? Well, I think Alaska was a great deal too. $50 million, I think it was. It was referred to as Seward's Folly. And now that was Alaska now. So, I mean, open to having all kinds of conversations as well. And now,
by the way, it was actually William Seward who also investigated buying Greenland and thought it would be a good thing back in the 1800s. There are a couple of points that need to be made here. So I've been listening to a lot of Tim Keller sermons. Got a great podcast. And what I've noticed, though, because I listen to a lot of them in a row, is always 3 points. And I'm disappointed in Keller because he's a Calvinist, so he should always have a sermon with 5 points. And instead, he's going with 3, but that's okay. Bunch of New Yorkers with limited attention span, you got to go with 3. But there are 3 points that need to be made here. Number one, Trump has enraged the media. Part of it was this question. And the question was asked by a reporter, and really it is the reporter. Then the way the reporter asked the question, that was the problem. Are you ruling out military intervention to take the Panama Canal and Greenland? Trump said no. Of course he's going to say no. Of course he's going to say no. Trump's a negotiator. He's not going to give up a negotiating position. He's never going to do it. And you all know, every Democrat out there knows Donald Trump is not going to invade Greenland. Donald Trump's the only president since World War II who didn't start a war. He's not going to start a war for Greenland. And if you think he is, you are an unserious, stupid person. You are. You're broken by Donald Trump and you can't admit it. You want to hold everybody else accountable for the things they say. You want to hold Donald Trump accountable for Donald Trump's antics when you know where the antics lead, which is bluster. It's all bluster. And you want to freak out about it. It is your choice to freak out about it. And the problem is, and this is point number 2, is so much of what we've seen in the first Trump administration and now he's not even president, is the left insisting the rest of us must be as freaked out as they are. We must be as driven to existential terror as they are. We must be offended by everything they're offended by. We must be offended in the same way. We cannot show grace. We cannot change our minds. We must be bound to the last thing we said, and it must be the most terrible view of Donald Trump. When we went through 4 years of Donald Trump and we didn't have World War III like they predicted or anything else. Final point here. Greenland is owned by Denmark. Denmark is a NATO ally. Denmark has not been investing military resources in Greenland, at the northern tip of Greenland into the Arctic Circle, where Russia and China are essentially ignoring sovereign territories of other nations in order to explore for oil and in order to build up their Arctic military forces. Donald Trump wants Denmark to invest more in its military, and if they're not going to allow the United States to invest more in its military in Greenland. Donald Trump doesn't really want Canada. Who would? But Donald Trump wants Canada to secure its border. Canada and the United States have the largest unsecured border between two nations on planet Earth. And the Canadians, in the last number of years, have allowed their side of the border to go to hell in terms of security. Justin Trudeau has been allowing massive flight of people, a lot of them Chinese, across the border into the United States. A lot of drugs have been shipped into Canada and carried across our northern border, not just our southern border. Donald Trump wants the Canadians to beef back up the border the way it used to be. Ridiculing Justin Trudeau brings down the Trudeau government and props up someone who may be more sympathetic to Trump's worldview. Ridiculing the Canadians, talking about them being America's hat, talking about them being the 51st state, it does nothing but anger people at their own prime minister, and he's now resigned. Donald Trump talking about invading Mexico, sending the military to Mexico, has gotten the Mexican president to actually say she'll take border security seriously. And then there's the issue with the Panama Canal, where the Chinese control the exit and entry points and the locks of the Panama Canal. And Donald Trump doesn't want the Chinese in charge because the Chinese get to survey our American naval vessels that travel through the Panama Canal. In addition, the money we pay to go through the canal goes to line the pockets of the Chinese military. Y'all, we've been through this before. Donald Trump says these outlandish things in the start of negotiating positions and whittles them down to the point where he denies he ever said them to begin with, even though he did. This isn't something new. Los Angeles County is on fire. The fires are burning at the rate of 4 football fields a minute. Think of the size of a football field. Imagine 4 of them in your head. And the fires are moving across 4 football fields every minute, destroying everything in their wake. And the National Press Corps is obsessed with the press conference of a man who is not president of the United States, while ignoring that the president of the United States and the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles are doing nothing, have done nothing, can do nothing, and will do nothing to stem the tide of fires in California. And the current president of the United States decided not to institute some forest fires back in October because he was afraid they could get out of control and cost him an election. And now Southern California is on fire, and the media is on fire over Donald Trump, a man who time and time again starts saying outlandish things to bully people as a negotiation tactic into giving him his way. And the media, instead of focusing on the fact that Denmark is now upping military spend in Greenland, Canada is getting serious about its border, Mexico has been over backwards to get serious about its border, and Panama is rethinking having the Chinese in charge of the canal. Instead of looking at all the things that all these countries are now looking at doing because of Donald Trump's bluster, they would rather be outraged about his bluster and ignore the results, because if they paid attention to the results, people would probably give him credit, and God forbid he get credit for any of this stuff.
Want to be on the show?
Hello.
I love your show.
Call Eric now at 877-973-7425.
Hello there, welcome. It is Erick Erickson across the United States of America. The phone number is 877-973-7425. One of the worst foreign policy mistakes this country ever made was made by the now deceased, soon to be buried Jimmy Carter, who one time The Simpsons referred to as history's greatest monster. I mean, Jimmy Carter had killer rabbits chase him. The one good thing Jimmy Carter really did was he made Argyle sweaters unpopular. Jimmy Carter surrendered American control of the Panama Canal to Panama. And if you're a good progressive, if you're on the left, you think it's a wonderful thing, returning sovereignty to Panama, getting rid of our colonialism. No, colonialism is actually a good thing. I reject the idea. Now, there are some empires that were bad. I think the Spanish and the German empires actually did a lot of terrible, atrocious things. The British Empire was a force for good in the world. And the American empire, I'm a big defender of. I think America should spread and be openly upfront about imperial ambitions because we are a force for good in the world. And control of the Panama Canal was a force for good. You know who controls it now? China. China controls it thanks to Jimmy Carter's boneheaded idea of getting rid of it. China controls the entrance and exit point of the Panama Canal, and they control the locks through a series of corporations that are tied to the Chinese Communist Party. And do you know one of the things that the Chinese do? Is they monitor every ship going in and out of the Panama Canal, including American warships. And we pay for access rights to go through the Panama Canal, and that money, a portion of it, goes back to the Chinese Communist Party and its military. The Chinese are a nefarious entity, and what Jimmy Carter did in the 1970s is ultimately handing our control of a vital national security global asset to the Chinese Communist Party. And Donald Trump wants that deal ended, and it should be ended, and it should be back in our control. And I am perfectly comfortable with the idea of the United States doing whatever it must do to take back control of the canal that we ourselves built. And by the way, I want you to understand, I'm not being flippant here. And I actually think Donald Trump is not going to engage the military to do it. I would if I were president. The Chinese should not be there. Monroe Doctrine, baby. Let's reassert it with the Panama Canal. Now, what was that? Where are we headed? Sorry. Kobe's talking in my ear, and I couldn't hear him because I was hearing myself. My volume is too loud. So I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, folks. That's what Kobe was telling me to do. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm, you can get 3 of them. You can save $200. You can get them for less than $200. You can get them at EdenPureDeals.com with a discount code Erick3. Now, for those of you new to the show in Mississippi, you're wondering, what is this Eden Pure Thunderstorm? Well, if you got a smell in your house, you got a smoke smell, dirty diaper odor, litter box odor, pet odor, moldy, musty odor, you fire up the Eden Pure Thunderstorm and it wipes out the odor. It's also an air purifier, so it gets rid of dust, pollen, pet dander, all that. It gets rid of bacteria, it gets rid of viruses. EdenPureDeals.com. You can get them for less than $200, save $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is Erick3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. Hello there. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you would like to be on the program, is 877-973-7425. Here's something new for you. For those of you who are new to the show, I should say. The rest of you have heard this before. I hope you'll consider texting the word Army, A-R-M-Y, to 33777, because as we go forward here, we're going to mobilize our listeners to call members of Congress, to call the Senate. Like, for example, I support Pete Hegseth's nomination to the United States Senate. I actually think he's going to be good. And I will mobilize our army of activists to call their senators and urge them to support these guys. I think it's worthwhile. And I would love to have you on board. I would love to have you play a role. All you have to do, it's very, very easy. You text the word Army to 33777, and when we do an action alert, you'll get an email. And when you go to text Army to 33777, you get the link back. You put in your name, your zip code, and your email address. I don't need your cell phone number. I'm not going to go after your cell phone number, and I'm not going to text you. I'm not going to spam you. But what I want to be able to do is email you an action alert to have you call your member of Congress, have you call your senator and say, you know what, support this tax cut plan, support this border bill, support this nomination, or oppose sometimes. So if you text the word Army to 33777, you do it. Now, here's the other thing. You put in your information, you follow the link, you'll also get personally to you, taken care of by me, a database of your elected officials down to your city hall. So you'll get their names, their email addresses, and their phone numbers of your members of Congress, your senators, your governor, your state legislators, and your local county and city officials where it's applicable. All you do, text Army to 33777. It's worth it. It gets you involved in the process. You're not just actually hearing me complain about stuff. You're able to take action to move the needle. Now, let's talk about the Laken-Riley Act. This should be a no-brainer. The Laken-Riley Act really shouldn't be a problem for anyone in America to support. The Laken-Riley Act is very simple. The Laken-Riley Act passed the House of Representatives yesterday. It's headed to the Senate. And it does one very simple thing. The Laken-Riley Act says that if an illegal alien commits a felony in this country, burglary, robbery, theft, assault, felonious levels, assault and battery, things like that, they've got to be detained by ICE. They can't be let go to report back. It's common sense. What's troubling is that yesterday in the House of Representatives, about 150 Democrats chose to stand with the illegal alien criminals instead of American victims, instead of American citizens. 48 Democrats, only 48 Democrats joined with Republicans. Now, you should know, in the United States Senate, Chuck Schumer is signaling Democrats, if they're allowed some amendments, they may be willing to put it to a vote on the floor of the Senate. John Fetterman is not someone we're all going to see eye to eye with. Let's just be honest here. Fetterman is a Democrat. Fetterman is a progressive. He's just not as progressive as some people thought. Turns out he can be reasonable on some issues. And John Fetterman is willing to be a sponsor in the United States Senate of this legislation.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of enormous respect for my colleague in the House, but I just happen to disagree on this. And for me, just like my friend and colleague in the Senate, like, it's really common sense. And I'd like to remind everybody that we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of migrants here illegally that have convicted of crimes. And why, I don't know why, who wants to defend that, to allow them to remain in our nation after that? And now, if you're here illegally and you're committing crimes and those things, I don't know why anybody thinks that it's controversial that they all need to go.
Do you think that this was one of, if not the biggest issue for this election?
Well, I think if we can't, there's 47 of us in the Senate, and if we can't pull up with 7 votes, if we can't get at least 7 out of 47, and if we can't, then that's the reason why we lost. That's one of them. That's one of why we lost.
Yes, that is exactly one of the reasons Democrats lost. They should listen to Fetterman on this, who's been pretty reasonable on this issue. Y'all, we don't need to revisit the details. Laken Riley was murdered in Athens, Georgia, by an illegal alien who came into this country on Joe Biden's watch, was allowed into this country, had been in and out of jail, committed crimes, moved out of New York, moved to Georgia, was tied to that violent gang in Venezuela. An American citizen is dead. It should outrage you. It should. That Democrats in the House decided to put the criminal illegal aliens and their rights ahead of American citizens. I want to spend a moment talking to progressives. One of the things that progressives get infuriated about is they believe that Donald Trump has allowed people on the right to debase themselves, that Christians have debased themselves, that people on the right have no shame. They're willing to turn on a dime to justify everything Donald Trump says. And by the way, they're right in some cases. In some cases, it's true. I mean, look, for example, at the number of conservatives who are suddenly totally fine with Robert Kennedy, a pro-abortion activist, being in charge of Health and Human Services because Donald Trump says that's his guy. Look at the people who will turn on a dime on the right. And in the left, there's a critique of Trump supporters that has some merit to it. But what the progressives don't understand, what they don't see, what they don't want to see is that they're doing the same thing. They're taking positions because of where Donald Trump lands on the issue. With no intellectual honesty of their own, they have become the thing they say they hate. Jen Rubin is the just blithering idiot, horrible human being who writes at the Washington Post. For years, they allowed her to claim she was some sort of conservative commentator when she's not. She's a terrible person. Jen Rubin was a Mitt Romney supporting Republican, a John McCain supporting Republican, and one of Jen Rubin's biggest causes, the cause Jen Rubin supported the loudest of all, was to move the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. When Donald Trump became president of the United States, Donald Trump did exactly what Jen Rubin wanted, and her reaction was to denounce the move. Because in her mind, no matter what her longstanding position was, if Donald Trump supported it, it was bad. And over the last number of years, I and others have watched this idiot at the Washington Post write columns attacking positions that Donald Trump had that she herself had. And the only reason she no longer has them is because Donald Trump has the position. There's no intellectual honesty there. There's no consistency there. She has allowed herself to be defined by whatever Donald Trump wants. She, in fact, is allowing Donald Trump to control her life. And if you're a progressive who has decided that you can't support the Laken Riley Act because it's what Donald Trump wants, it's what Republicans want, you are allowing Republicans to shape your right and your wrong. You are allowing Republicans to control your life. You are allowing conservatives to shape your thinking. You're not thinking for yourself. You are controlled by the rest of us. And what we want, you will do the opposite of. And the fact that some of you will nod your head and say yes shows you just how much control we have over your life and why you are so miserable, because you have no choice in the world. Your choice is now defined by what someone else chooses to do, and then you stake out your position. I'm sorry. But it's just wild to me to see individuals in this country decide that they can't support a common sense law to detain a criminal who is an illegal alien because Donald Trump thinks that a criminal who is an illegal alien should be detained. This is the level of brokenness of the political left. And they don't see it. They don't appreciate it. They don't understand it. They don't recognize it. They don't understand they have allowed Donald Trump to be the controller of their destiny. They've made the choice to define themselves in opposition to him. And because of that, they must find out where he is on a position before they know where they stand. They're not thinking for themselves anymore. It's sad to see. Cheryl, you're going to be the first caller today on the Erick Erickson Show. Welcome to the show, Cheryl. How are you? Good for him. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Cheryl, I got to tell you something real honest. So I see the note on the call screening computer, and I misread what it said. And I really thought you were calling to justify the position of these progressives who are against it. So, okay. So no, I was bracing myself for an argument. So I'm like, oh my gosh, she's actually sane. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So now to your point, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, you need to understand that Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff just voted against military support for Israel. So I think they're going to double down on progressivism on something like Lincoln Riley. I think you're going to see a guy like John Fetterman. And by the way, a couple of other Democratic senators have now come out and said they'll support it. My guess is that John Ossoff will wind up supporting it, because John Ossoff is up for re-election next year, and it's named after Lincoln Riley, who died in Georgia. I suspect you'll see John Ossoff supported, and Raphael Warnock probably won't. But I do actually think that can be used against Ossoff for Republicans to say, look at Warnock. What are the odds that Ossoff would have supported it if he wasn't on the ballot? And turn it into a cynical play against him. I mean, Republicans should use this issue against John Ossoff to force him to vote. You got to get 60 votes. Republicans have, 52, 53 seats in the Senate. Say need 8 more senators to go along with it to get over the filibuster. I think they could get them. That's why Chuck Schumer is out there today saying, hey, guys, we're willing to cut a deal with you on the Lincoln Riley. I think they're going to have to do that. Now, I got to move on. We got Joel Kaplan coming at the top of the hour. But before I do, I want to recommend something to you. But I realize this is an ad. It's for Hillsdale, erickforhillsdale.com. But I got to, let me just back up here for a minute. I got my undergraduate degree. I got a double major in political science and history with a minor in English. My concentration was the American constitutional period and the Revolutionary period. So most of my classes in the history department were about the colonial and Revolutionary War era of America. And a lot of my political science classes were about the Constitution. I took all the Constitution classes in undergrad. In fact, my Constitution classes were so good in undergrad that the law school connected to my college was actually a little bit perturbed at the con law program in the undergrad, because you had all these know-it-all kids coming into law school. And then I went to law school, and my highest grade in law school was in constitutional law. I got a 98 on the exam. And I took the Hillsdale College Constitution 101 class online and still learned stuff that I had not either appreciated or digested or really understood when I was an undergrad. And you can do it too. It's completely free. And they are 30-minute lectures. I think there's 6 of them. They're video. You can take them at your own pace. It is completely free. If you want to learn more about the Constitution, how it was written, the balance of power, how progressivism has worked to kind of undermine it and bring about this idea of a living Constitution, all you got to do is go to erickforhillsdale.com. I can't recommend it enough. It actually is a really good program. I learned stuff that I thought I already knew, and I appreciated stuff that I wasn't necessarily sure before. Go to erickforhillsdale.com, ERICK. It is completely free. You do it at your own pace, and you can also see what kind of makes Hillsdale College unique and has since 1844. ErickForHillsdale.com. It's a great way to learn about Hillsdale College. It's a great way to learn about the Constitution as well. By the way, they've got other ones as well on C.S. Lewis, on the Book of Genesis. The Constitution one, really good. ErickForHillsdale.com.
You can follow Erick around on social media at EW Erickson on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And check him out at EWErickson.com.
Hello there. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. We are coast to coast and continuing to pick up a lot of stations. Las Vegas, by the way, you know I love you guys. I came out there, hung out with listeners a while back, and it's delighted to now be regularly live at least on all 3 hours every day in Las Vegas. KXNT. Just y'all, I'm overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers, really, who have put the show on and are willing to take a chance on the show. And just the explosion and growth in the last few weeks has just been deeply encouraging. At the top of the hour, Joe Kaplan is going to join me. If you're a regular listener, you know I don't often have guests. If you're new to the program, I don't have guests. My show is you and me. We chat with each other. We don't need to turn you into a third party interloper eavesdropping, but occasionally, rarely, it's worth having someone on who can really shed deeper insight into an issue. And Joe Kaplan is the head of global public policy for Facebook. He was a law clerk for Antonin Scalia, and he's convinced Facebook to drop its fact checking policies and open up free speech on Facebook. He'll be joining me to talk about that at the top of the hour. I gotta just, as a total random aside, I gotta say that golf game on ESPN last night, I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting. Now, most of you probably don't know about this, but Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy came up with this idea of essentially a 5-story high golf simulator. And with the 5-story high golf simulator, they started a competition, and it's kind of wild. So on the fairway, you're hitting, and they have boxes for, like, if you hit in the sand, you're gonna play in the golf simulator in sand. If you hit in rough, you're gonna have rough. If you hit on the fairway, you're gonna have fairway. And then they have this putting green that can rotate itself and reshape itself. And so you're actually putting on a putting. It was a wild thing to see. The production value, I thought, stuck. Like, it's a very cool concept, and I bet I would have been really enjoyable to be there in person. But I think they didn't really know what to do with the TV production last night, and I hope they'll change it up. I was kind of encouraged, but I will tell you what encourages me even more. Severance is coming back. For those of you who do not watch Apple TV Plus, it actually has some of the very best shows, but most people don't subscribe to it. But Severance is coming back, and Severance is a brilliant program, and I am absolutely just ready for Severance to come back. But in the meantime, it looks like I've got Golf Simulator Golf to watch on TV, and I am totally down with watching Golf Simulator Golf instead of the NBA because I'm just not I've never liked basketball. Now, when we come back, Joe Kaplan. Then I'll take your phone calls as well, 877-973-7425, right here on the Erick Erickson Show. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the fruited plain. My friends, I'm delighted to have you from Anchorage, Alaska, all the way to Miami, Florida, coast to coast and beyond. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Yesterday, I started the show talking about the big changes at Meta. There's been a massive meltdown by the media and the left, but I repeat myself, over fact checking. And I want to tell you a story real quick. I got a guest from Meta, Joel Kaplan, who's now the head of global policy. But just let me set the stage with two things. One, and Mom, I love you. I got to tell this story on you. A couple of years ago, I put up a tweet, and it was on Twitter, and it was offhanded that there was a year when I was a kid, we had Chinese food every Wednesday night growing up in Dubai, every Wednesday night. So much so that if we hadn't ordered by about 5:30 p.m., the restaurant would call and ask us if we wanted the food because we got the same thing every Wednesday night from the Chinese restaurant. So one year I thought it was very funny, and I still do, that it was Pearl Harbor Day, and my mom said, we can't have Chinese food tonight. And my sisters are like, they didn't bomb Pearl Harbor. And I thought it was a funny story. I told it on Twitter, and that awful person, Christy Teigen, what's her name, came after me, accused me of racism, and a fact checker for some online newscast called my mother, found my mother's phone number, who was in her 80s, called her at home. She didn't remember the incident. And he ran a story that I was vilifying my mother as a racist, and that's what this was all about. And that was a supposed objective fact checker. Horrible human being. My mother did keep him on the phone and share the gospel with him. I do want you to know that. My mother loves Jesus and wanted this guy too as well. But that was a fact checker who harassed my mother and then tried to vilify me over a throwaway story that I just thought was funny that happened to me when I was a kid. I don't like the fact checking industry. Second story, real quick. I know a number of billionaires. This isn't a humble brag or anything like that. It's just I know them. And I know several of the tech billionaires. The only one I know who I consider a normal human being is the owner of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, who is a nice person who does not live in an ostentatious home. He has 4 children, 3 natural, 1 a website. He's got a wonderful wife. He's just a normal human being, other than he has the money to tear up his wife's garden and put an octagon in his backyard. He's a normal person. He is not surrounded with sycophants and crackheads like so many of the rich tech bros in Silicon Valley are. He's a normal human with a normal family, happily married. And it's always been wild to me that he sometimes gets attacked by people who don't know him because, well, he's not out there being flashy on the cover of all the celebrity magazines because he's at home with his wife and kids. And he runs one of the largest websites on the planet. And the media is very upset because they've changed policy. And to talk about that policy and the change is the head of global policy at Meta, Joel Kaplan, joining me. Joel, welcome to the show. How are you? Joel, first of all, I got to say, I totally forgot you had law clerk for Antonin Scalia. What a cool guy. Yeah, I bet so. And now you find yourself in this wild position, promoted the other day after Nick Clegg left to the head of global policy at Meta. Can you kind of just describe first before we get into this? What is your role? How would you describe it to people? No, yeah, okay, so let's get into those. If you don't mind, and by the way, I got to say, your team was really, really good at trying to prime me for every thing I wanted to ask you, and I don't do that out of habit, even to guys like Josh, who is a friend, but I did set the parameters. But if you don't mind, can you kind of explain Why did Facebook decide to go down the road of fact checking, and why now this decision to change? Now, I read one of the articles. I think it was in the New York Times, and I can't remember if it was attributed to you or to Mark Zuckerberg. But I thought it was an interesting point that over the last 4 years, as the Biden administration has encouraged Meta and other social media companies to moderate misinformation, disinformation, and the like, that because the American government, with our First Amendment, still feels like it can do it. It has done nothing but inspire other governments to think that they too can get into the works and try to control information on social media. Can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah, and I realize it happens at scale, but it is kind of striking to hear you talk about this and that a company like Meta can change a policy and, in my view, make it more user friendly because of an election in the United States. And it's kind of unfortunate from my mind. And I don't expect you to, I don't want to get you in trouble with this, just me commenting here that an American company shouldn't have to worry about changes in presidential administrations to make policy. And yet, here we are. And in that regard, I guess political content on Facebook. Look, I understand the memes out there, and I get it. That I too. In fact, I've told your boss that I think that sometimes people get too online and they get obsessed about stuff on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and you name it. LinkedIn, the worst of all for the people in the corporate world. But I noticed with me and the stuff that I did on Facebook that the political content I put up got less and less traction over time with changes to the algorithm. And now it sounds like Facebook may be more open to having more political stuff show up in the news feed and be able to connect people with political conversation. Is that a fair characterization? That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so you mentioned Instagram. Anyone who listens to my program knows it is the only social media website product that I like. It is like it is an oasis in hell compared to the rest of social media. I get to connect with people. I get to see stuff. But I gotta throw this one wild card at you from a friend of mine who's a chef who he does great videos. I love to cook on knife skills, and I'm working on my knife skills. And he's noticed, and a Catholic priest friend of mine has, who sells pocket knives and has displayed them on Instagram, that the algorithm has kind of worked against them because, and I'm sure it has to do with knives and stuff. But is there any way to tweak that sort of stuff on Instagram? Because I feel like people who do cool stuff with, like, they're making beautiful things like a knife, or they're a chef showing skills, if you're not following them, you may not see that stuff in the exploration. And they're doing cool stuff, and I don't know what can be done about it, but I hope you guys can think about it. Yeah. Yeah, I will. I will. And one of them, just as a side, it's so there's a Catholic priest in Arkansas. He's been on my program before, and he makes pocket knives, and he's into CrossFit and pocket knives, and he's just the coolest dude. And I'm like, I'm not seeing your pocket knife stuff anymore. And he just happened to mention, I think it's the algorithm, it's not me. So I'll send that one to you. But look, I could spend a whole lot more time talking to you, but it's radio and I've got commercial breaks. I just thank you for stepping up and doing this. Number one, I think you're doing the right thing, and number two, appreciate Facebook has always been willing to have conversations with me, whether we've agreed or not. And you guys really are like the only normal social media company I encounter. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Joel Kaplan, everybody. He's the head of global policy for Facebook now, for Meta, I should say. I'm sorry, it's Facebook, it's Meta. And I do think letting the community moderate itself and providing people the personal tools where they can adjust the algorithm to meet their needs is the common sense approach. And I do think it's notable, if there's a big takeaway here, largely acknowledging it is the result of an election that has seen a president come in who supports free speech, that has allowed an American company to be able to be more supportive of free speech. And it's actually, I personally think, a damning indictment on the Biden administration that an American company could not be as committed to free speech as it wanted to be for fear of what the presidential administration would do. So good for Facebook for making the switch.
Want to be on the show?
Hello. I'd love your
Hello there. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the United States. This meta change, I realize for a lot of people, if you're not on Facebook, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. But I want to read for you some headlines so you understand what all of this is about and why it actually matters. And I'll give you, I pulled a screenshot earlier. Here's the headline from The Verge. Here are some of the horrible things you can now say on Instagram and Facebook. Claire Duffy from CNN, quote, calling women household objects now permitted on Facebook. Matt Levites at NBC News. Meta's new hate speech guidelines permit users to say LGBTQ people are mentally ill. Popular information, Meta goes MAGA. Platformer, Meta suspenders to the right on speech. Tech Policy Press. Mark Zuckerberg announces changes to Meta's content moderation policies. Wired Magazine. Meta now lets users say gay and trans people have mental illness. This is how upset they are. I'm actually shocked that until yesterday you couldn't call a woman a household object. I'm shocked. You could call them a dishwasher, but not a household object. I just why? The fact that the illiberal left is upset that you can actually say what you want to say on Facebook now, as opposed to censoring you, tells you everything you need to know about these people. They are the tyrants they warned us about. They are the totalitarians they told us we should keep an eye out for. This, by the way, is one of the reasons I also support Old Glory Bank and have been a customer of Old Glory Bank for now 2 years, well before they started advertising on the radio, because I was concerned. I mean, look at the outrage over Meta and Facebook allowing people to just speak. And the left has been trying to pressure banks in this country to silence and censor people, to shut down bank accounts of conservatives. And Old Glory Bank was started by conservatives who were worried about the trend. John Rich, Larry Elder, Ben Carson, and others came together and they started this bank out of Oklahoma. And it's by conservatives for conservatives. I have sent multiple gun store owners and a firearm, a gun range to Old Glory Bank. Why? Because the left is using banks to target gun manufacturers and gun stores and shut them down and put them out of business and not bank with them. And so they've all gone to Old Glory Bank and they know they're going to be protected there. You will be too. So will your kids. You get a no-fee checking, no-fee savings account. You get mortgages, car loans, home equity lines of credit, you name it. OldGloryBank.com. OldGloryBank.com. Do it all there. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, terms and conditions apply. Greetings. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the United States. Delighted to have you with me here. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, is 877-973-7425. If you text the word Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can follow me across the internet. You should follow me on Instagram, as I was talking to Joe Kaplan about. It is the only good social media site. It's just I don't follow meme accounts. I follow friends and family and put up cooking pictures. It's just it's the good site. Now we got to move on because I got to talk about Los Angeles. Los Angeles is burning, and I'm not talking about the song. Things are not good in L.A. County, and over 3,000 acres, 5,000 acres now. It gives you a sense of how fast this thing is moving. Imagine 4 football fields. Every minute, that amount of land is going up in flames right now in Los Angeles. There is no containment at all. 0% contained. Homes are burning. It's not just celebrities. It's the poor and the middle class. It is not a good situation. Rick Caruso was the property developer who ran for mayor of Los Angeles and came very close to winning, but did not win. He was on television on Fox 11 in Los Angeles this morning.
My heart goes out, obviously, to the people with their homes, and I'm watching the small businesses around us go up in flames. This is people's livelihoods, so it's devastating. But what is most concerning to me is our first responders and our firefighters who are trying to battle this. There's no water in the Palisades. There's no water coming out of the fire hydrants. This is an absolute mismanagement by the city. It's not the firefighters' fault, but it's by the city. And I'm going to be very honest. We've got a mayor that's out of the country, and we've got a city that's burning, and there's no resources to put out fires. So if you look at your pictures, you don't see the firefighters there because there's nothing they can do. And it looks like we're in a third world country here. Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of tough questions that we need to ask the mayor and the city council and our representatives and the county representatives. Why didn't you work to mitigate this? What was your brush mitigation program? I heard you earlier talking about it's been dry because there hasn't been rain. That's not the biggest problem here. The brush up in these hills that are controlled by the city and the county, I would bet you that if they haven't been handled, mitigated, pruned, removed for probably 30 or 40 years. This was a disaster waiting to happen. And what's predictable is preventable. And who's paying the price are all of these people in their homes and their businesses tonight. Now, we'll rebuild.
I got to tell you guys, I'm watching the video and I realize you can't see it on radio. It looks like the descriptions of hell in Scripture. The air is glowing with embers blowing through the sky. Little red dots glitter in the sky, except it's embers. Fire and smoke everywhere. Buildings glowing, red eyes on the horizon that are buildings in flames. The wild, tangled, plasmonic hairs of fire reaching above buildings as if it's someone's hair blowing in the wind, glowing, but it's fire. Cars driving by, people fleeing. There are no fire trucks because there is no water. Voters voted over a year ago to build more reservoirs. Los Angeles County has not built a new water reservoir since the 1970s. They've had explosive growth since then, but they haven't built reservoirs. In fact, California itself, the environmentalists went to war against those who wanted more water reservoirs in the 70s and won. And voters finally voted to build more reservoirs, and the environmentalists and progressive activists have kept the development and the build of reservoirs in lawsuits in court to prevent the development of new reservoirs. The firefighters literally have run out of water to fight the fires in Los Angeles and have not contained a single fire. Tens of thousands of homes are threatened. And part of this has to do with the majority of the progressive voters in Los Angeles who have regularly decided that they would rather a progressive than a pragmatically competent person. The mayor is in Ghana, halfway around the world, 7,500 miles away in Ghana, for the inauguration of a president of a country who most people in Los Angeles have never heard of. She's on her way home. But here's the thing, I'm going to differ with many of you on this. It's like I couldn't have cared less that Ted Cruz wanted to take his family out of the country during the power outage in Texas. There's really nothing he can do. He's a senator. He's not an executive. Now, the mayor of Los Angeles is an executive. There are some things she can do. The problem here is so much of the outrage about her being gone is performative. But the reality is, and this gets to Rick Caruso's point, is that she could have sat down when she took office and said, what are the things that we need to do to be preemptive? Wildfire's the thing. What do we need to do? When's the last time we've dealt with the brush in the hills? But you see, the environmentalists haven't wanted them to do anything to the brush. And all that kindling built up. Every progressive utopia goes to hell in a handbasket, and this progressive utopia in Los Angeles is literally turning into hell on earth. Hell on earth. It's just wild to see. And I'm appalled that no one did anything to think, to preempt. Let me just read you some of these verses. Black darkness is what Peter describes as hell. A furnace, a fiery furnace is what Jesus says. A place of agonizing and torment, of heat. Is it not interesting that they're living in a desert where the scripture is being written and it's described as an eternal, unquenchable heat and fire? Los Angeles is getting a foretaste of eternity right now. I'm not going to be a Pat Robertson and dive in and say God's bringing judgment on all of us. But this is a metaphorical echo of what's to come. There is no water to put out the fires. And management seems uninterested in doing so. You know what management seems interested in doing in Los Angeles? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, if you listen to my program regularly, you know one of the things that I bristle about and complain about is that too often on our side of the aisle, we rush to blame everything on DEI and George Soros. Some things are to blame on DEI, some things are to blame on George Soros, but not everything. Like the rush with Boeing to blame it on DEI. It really had nothing to do with it. I have a lot of listeners to this program who work at Boeing. And they've been telling me for years the problems at Boeing. No one ever brought up DEI. Even the ones who complain about DEI never said that was a problem at Boeing. The problem was they handed it over to the accountants at McDonnell Douglas, and they were bean counters. And they decided not to innovate and cut corners and save costs and outsource to India to save money. And it brought down the company. Los Angeles is a situation where progressive diversity, equity, and inclusion problems actually are playing a role in what's going on here. Well, how do I know this? Adam Carolla, the actor, the celebrity, actually testified that he was told when he applied to be a firefighter that it would take him 7 years because he wasn't black, Hispanic, or female. In 2020, they fired all the firefighters who wouldn't get the COVID vaccine. The fire chief said that it was more important to train for DEI than to train for putting out fires. This is the progressive utopia that the left wanted. You know, there's this idea, and a lot of writers over time, T.S. Eliot, C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, others have written about it. It's been reflected in the Chronicles of Narnia. It's been reflected in the Lord of the Rings that we can't create like God creates. We can only mock what God creates. And God, in turn, can mock our creation. You see, we can't actually create a utopia because we're sinners. We can't create a utopia. And progressives, because they don't believe in God, they believe they have to build heaven on earth. And every attempt to build heaven on earth turns into hell on earth. And here we have a burning physical manifestation of hell on earth in Los Angeles because progressives decided to elevate progressive policy over core competency. Progressives decided to elevate progressive values over the values of the whole and of common sense. So you couldn't have reservoirs built because it was bad for the environment. You couldn't have just the best firefighter because it violated diversity, equity, and inclusion. You couldn't have the ground taken care of and the scrub brush taken up because it violated the natural ecosystem. And so now what do they have? Hell on earth in Los Angeles. The people of Los Angeles, the majority of them voted for this, but none of them deserve it. And I know there some of you are like, yes, they did. They deserve it. This is the logical outcome. It is the logical outcome of what they get. The definition of mercy, though, is sparing you from what you deserve. And grace is giving you what you do not deserve. And all the people in Los Angeles right now could use some grace and mercy because the winds continue and the rain is not falling and there's no water in the reservoir. The city is burning. And the fire, my friends, does not care who voted for the left or who voted for the right. The fire does not care who's a Christian and who's not. The fire does not care who's a progressive and who's woke and who's unwoke and who's conservative. The fire does not care who's the righteous and the unrighteous. The fire does not care if you're a sinner or saint. The fire consumes everything. And none of those people deserve this, and yet they're getting it. It is awful to see. But it is also an entirely predictable consequence of the collapse of progressive governance that always comes. From the rise of homelessness on the street, to the rise of crime and the drug epidemic, to the rise of a fire that did not have to be. Because the progressive utopian values trump the protection of the citizens. It's just sad, 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 and so predictable. A lot of people are going to need a lot of help. Now, let me move on. In what now? 12 days? Yes, 12 days. I can do that math in my head. 12 days, Donald Trump becomes president again. And I think you should probably take him at his word that he wants to put tariffs on. And tariffs are going to raise the prices of computers. Why? Because so many of the components for computers are made abroad. The result, of course, is that you probably want to start locking in your technology purchases for this year if you're a company, and you might want to reach out to Vision Computer at 404 Compute today and start planning before tariffs kick in. 404 Compute, visioncomputers.com as well. And listen, those of you new to the show, you're listening in Corinth, Mississippi, or Tupelo, Mississippi, you're listening in Susanville, California, or Watertown, New York, or you're listening up in Anchorage. Vision Computer can help you. They're based in Atlanta, but they do business with people everywhere in the country. They'd love to do business with you. They can build you a computer, they can save you money, and then they can be your tech support. You get 5-star tech service from Vision Computer. They can even remote in, fix your computer remotely. They can help you with printer support. They can help you with email support. They can get your computer shipped to you. They work with you on the design and the build and what you want. They make sure you're not going to get taken advantage of. You tell them what you need, what you want. They put it together for you, and now's the time to do it before you have to worry about the cost going up from tariffs. VisionComputers.com or 404 Compute. If you tell them that I sent you, you're going to save even more money. VisionComputer.com.
Well connected and well respected. It's Erick Erickson live every weekday.
Greetings, conversationalists. The phone number here, 877-973-7425, if you want to be on the program. I got to put what's happening with these California wildfires in a little political perspective for you. The President of the United States, there is no expectation from anyone anywhere that he will be able to do anything. He is not expected to, and it is wild to see. He's got 12 days left on the job. He's got Kamala Harris, who was a senator from California, and no one is looking to Joe Biden for anything. You got Gavin Newsom out there. Can you imagine the reaction if fire hydrants had run out of water and Ron DeSantis was the governor? The media would be crucifying him. You can see in the way the media fluffs up Gavin Newsom that they are totally on his side. Gavin Newsom never has to worry about the press going after him and his policies. And the mayor, the mayor of Los Angeles, who is out of the country in Africa during fire season, no expectation that she can do anything. They're all about Donald Trump. They're angry about Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump has suggested when he becomes president, in cities and counties and states that do not do fire prevention, he will pull back federal fire funds. So he's not elected. He's not sworn in yet. He's not going to be president for 12 days. And the media would rather attack Donald Trump for a prospective policy that is designed to incentivize advanced preparations for fires and prevention thereof than to actually wonder where the president is or where Gavin Newsom is or where the mayor of Los Angeles is. Donald Trump has continued to break their brains. In fact, what I found very notable was last night on CNN and MSNBC, as these fires had not only gotten out of control, but the fire hydrants had run dry. MSNBC and CNN were focused on what Donald Trump said about Greenland. Screw the people of California and the actual news. Let's get worked up about something Donald Trump said. And he's not even president of the United States. Joe Biden's presidency is shrinking before our eyes. No one has any expectation that Joe Biden can or do anything to help. But they're giving Gavin Newsom a pass as well in a way they never would a Republican, and they're obsessed yet again with Donald Trump. It is all about the ratings, isn't it? It's all about the ratings. It's wild to see. All right. 877-973-7425. When we come back, the Biden administration wants to ban cigarettes. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. As always, if you text Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, the social media links for YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and you name it. All right. I'm going to make some people mad. I have a prediction. My prediction is that within the next 5 years, there is going to be a major social backlash to sports betting and recreational marijuana. It's my prediction. Could be wrong, but I have an idea that's coming in, and here's why. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and he was talking about a conversation he had with a high schooler. The high schooler told him that all the kids in his class, and they're all too young to be on the apps, all the kids in his class were placing sports bets. We're about to have a generation of bankrupt young men who have no money because they lost it all on sports betting. And I'm sorry, but I personally find it degrading that every damn sports program you've got now shows the betting odds. They are encouraging the behavior. They are encouraging what is an addictive behavior. They're encouraging it. ESPN is partnering with the sports betting apps. You have them sponsoring things on college campuses. I know guys who are friends of mine. They get mad at me for even talking about the subject. They're very defensive of it because they make money doing the prognostications and who you should bet and trust them. And I see people doing it. And it's, oh, why are you? I'm not. I am literally not opposed to you betting on sports. What I am opposed to is the normalization of it as a behavior that we should engage in. And I'm sorry, you can't tell me that's not happening when it is on every sports network. It is all over social media. It is every social media influencer. It is on virtually every talk show now. It is the normalization of sports betting targeting young men who do not have the money to do it. And there's going to be a backlash to it. It is going to come. I will not run advertisements for sports betting. I have turned down thousands. I've turned down tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars to endorse sports betting apps. I'm not going to do it. And again, I'm not opposed to it. I have guys who come into my front porch on Sunday nights and they sit there and they're placing bets on sports. I don't do it, but I don't mind that people do it. What I mind though is what seems more and more predatory behavior. And it's increasingly targeting younger men who don't have the means to do it, who think it's the socially cool, acceptable thing to do. They're advertised almost as they're going to be given some money to do it, and they lose it all. We're promoting risky behaviors and trying to normalize them. Same with recreational marijuana. If you want to get high, I think there's a growing body of evidence that if you're under 25 using marijuana, you have a disproportionate, dangerously high risk of getting schizophrenia. There actually is copious amounts of research now that people who are regular users of marijuana under the age of 25 have disproportionately high rates of developing schizophrenia. But also paranoia and other things for people who are regular users of marijuana. If you want to go to Las Vegas and you want to go get yourself a brownie or get high, go for it. I don't care. But what I do care about is that we are proliferating it in such a way in society that it almost seems like this is a safer alternative to smoking. You're not going to get cancer from the weed. You're just going to get high. The problem is the number of people in society who are now driving while high. I was at Publix, the grocery store, 2 days ago. And a couple pulled up with their child and got out of the car and the cloud of smoke came with it, and it was not cigarette smoke. And it stinks. By the way, I think cigarettes stink, but marijuana smells awful. If you want to get high, at least get an edible so the rest of us don't have to smell it. It's just gross. It really, there's a reason they call it skunk weed. It stinks. I don't care if you engage in the behavior. But I think we're going to have a social backlash over so many people in society now promoting and marketing it and trying to normalize it. There are risky behaviors that when you do them, the rest of us are fine with you doing them, but we can all, or at least should be, mature adults enough to acknowledge that when you mainstream them, normalize them, and destigmatize them, it's actually not a good thing for society. And if you can't understand what I mean, I don't know if you want to be willfully obtuse or not, but you should think a little bit harder about what I'm saying. The behaviors that behind closed doors you engage in, nobody cares about. No one's going to police you. No one's going to throw you in jail. But when everybody in society decides, hey, this is a fun thing to do, we should normalize it, it draws out bad things into society. All of that is tied into a story with the Biden administration. This is one of the things that just baffles me. The Democrats are working overtime on the legalization of recreational marijuana while being zealots against cigarettes. I don't like the smell of cigarettes any more than I like the smell of weed, but I think cigarettes actually stink less. I'll tell you what smells fantastic. A great cigar. Cigars actually, even when I was not a smoker of cigars, pipe tobacco and cigars, like this doesn't, it's not a terrible smell. I actually like the smell of a pipe. I don't smoke a pipe. I occasionally have a cigar. I will never smoke a cigarette. But the Biden administration has decided to try to push a ban on cigarettes before they get out the door. Something no Democratic administration has done before. And essentially what they claim they're doing through the FDA is that cigarette nicotine levels are too high and they're going to ban them in favor of lower nicotine level products. Basically try to push everybody to Zyn, I guess, even though they don't like that either. By the way, they're trying to regulate the Zyn. What they're doing to some degree is they're trying to push people to weed. But there's something else they're doing as well. One of the arguments for the legalization of marijuana has long been that if you legalize it and destigmatize it, you shut down the drug traffickers. That's actually not the case. Believe it or not, there have been ample studies now done that show that many of the parent companies of the recreational marijuana producers out west have ties to the drug cartels, the Chinese, or to the mafia. By banning cigarettes, what the Biden administration intends to do is to make the drug cartels even more powerful. You're going to take a legal product and make it illegal. We saw what happened in Prohibition. It's always the progressives. It's always the progressives. The progressives like to ban things. And I got to tell you that, again, like take sports betting and marijuana. I can see where we're headed as a society with these things as we normalize them, and it's where we wound up with cigarettes. And now society is walking back on cigarettes because it turns out they were amplifying the nicotine and other things and the carcinogens, people getting lung cancer from the cigarettes, and on and on and on and on and on. We're going to head down the road now the same way with sports betting and with marijuana. And again, I don't know if you guys are capable of nuancing this or not. I'm trying my best here. Again, I don't care if you engage in sports betting. Virtually every single friend that I have does it, and I don't care. I don't keep up with sports enough to want to do it. I don't care if you smoke weed. I really don't. It's not going to affect me one way or the other, unless you're driving. And that gets to my concern. There are behaviors in society that I have no problem with you engaging in, But when we mainstream them, normalize them, and say that they're openly acceptable, it does lead to bad results. And here we are with cigarettes, where the Biden administration has decided it has led to bad results. The normalization of cigarettes, and look what the politicians, the lawyers, and the judges have done over time. They have walked back the ability to advertise cigarettes. They've encouraged films to get people to stop smoking in movies. They've had to do all these things to re-stigmatize it, to make it no longer normal. The same behaviors that society is now engaging in with sports betting and with weed, we're now reversing on cigarettes. And it should be a warning to all of us where this is going to head. I actually do believe there are things that people can engage in, behaviors that don't need to be banned, but also don't need to be publicly praised and celebrated. But too many people these days have decided that if it is acceptable to do, we should celebrate doing it. And that's just not the case, I don't think, with a lot of this stuff, where you can get by with it in private and be fine. But when we're embracing it and saying it's socially acceptable, we're running a lot of people downhill who can't afford to live the lifestyle that you and I might live. I'm deeply concerned, however, with the Biden administration deciding on their way out the door they're going to try to do a cigarette ban, that all they're going to do is prop up the Mexican drug cartels. This administration, I'm wondering if Hunter Biden secretly has the Mexican drug cartels as a client, because this administration seems to want to do a whole lot to help the Mexican drug cartels. They've turned a blind eye to the border. They've allowed the Mexican drug cartels to proliferate across the border, all these sorts of things. I'm wondering if this administration is in the pocket of the Mexican drug cartels. It's total speculation on my part. Wild, wackadoo, conservative speculation from Erick Erickson that Joe Biden's in the pocket of the drug cartels. Well, hell, I mean, he's been in the pocket of the Chinese and all of Hunter Biden's other clients. I wonder if we should check and see if El Capo is one of Hunter Biden's clients. Maybe he's an art patron. Because I know exactly where this goes. You take a legal product and you make it illegal, like cigarettes, you're going to embolden the drug cartels. That is the argument used with marijuana, and it's one of the reasons I'm not willing to fight for a complete reversal on the legalization of marijuana. I just don't think it's something that we should be casually accepting in society, even as you can do it legally behind the scenes. But what the Biden administration is going to do is just make bad guys rich and start another drug trade. The nanny state of the Biden administration. Now, you know, if Donald Trump came in and did something like this, the American media would be beside themselves. They would be furious. But because the Biden administration is the one doing it, many of these people in the media, many of them closet smokers, by the way, they're not going to say anything. They're not going to hold him accountable. And that's one of the degrading facts of life with the American press today. That behaviors that they think are appalling, they will say nothing about, so long as it's their side engaging in the behaviors. We need a free press. And sadly, in this country, what we have is a press in the pocket of the progressive left, and they're not willing to free themselves.
Want to be on the show?
Hello. I love your show.
Call Eric now at 877-973-7425.
Welcome back. By the way, a listener texted me and said that the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, cut the fire department budget by over $17 million this past year. Goodness. Also, got this email from a listener. Our neighbor smokes the skunk weed, and it definitely smells like it. We cannot sit on our front porch when they're smoking it because of the pungent smell. We can't enjoy the outdoors. Eric, I've even smelled it passing by their house, and my windows aren't down or the AC's on. My son sometimes sits on the back porch, and he could smell it. But my son smokes cigars in a pipe, and they smell good to me. So I've told the story before. We've got neighbors. We have a big empty wooded section next to our house. You can't build on it. There's a gully and stuff, but on the other side, we got some neighbors. They put up a big privacy fence, and then they put up one of those pavilions in the backyard, like the tents, and it's got the sides you can zip up. I was like, oh, they sit out there, I guess, and in the wintertime, that they have no, y'all, they hot box. For those of you who do not know the phenomenon, the family piles into this thing and zips it up, and they smoke weed. And then when they're done and they unzip, the cloud just rolls through the woods. It looks like a fog rolling. And then you smell it and it stinks. And you're like, oh gosh, do I sit out here and inhale and enjoy the evening, or do I go inside so I don't stink? I just like, look, I don't care what you do in your own backyard. I really don't. But I think the normalization of some behaviors is a bad thing. And one of the things that I have learned over time, and I've read people write about, I can't give you the sources right now, but it's that the wealthy engage in behaviors in society, and they think that they can contain them to themselves, and they never can. And the poor, when the behaviors get down to them, do not have the money to be able to engage in the lifestyle that the rich started. Whether it's sexual licentiousness, and the poor, they can't afford the alimony, they can't afford the abortion, they can't afford the birth control, whatever. Whether it's drugs, they can't afford the economic fallout of addictive behavior from drugs. But the rich oftentimes engage in these behaviors, decide that they're socially normal, cool, and acceptable, and it trickles down into society, causing fallout. People with means bet on sports. God bless you, go do it. But you can't say, well, if you don't have enough income, you're not allowed to do it. No, they're going to do it too. And the wreckage of society, there are more of them than there are of you rich people. The wreckage on society is going to be destructive. And you've normalized it, mainstreamed it, glorified it, wrote about it, advertised it, and promoted it as something everyone can do and have fun. And it's not really the case. But you don't care because you've got the means to escape the consequences. That, my friends, is the problem. Now, Swiss America has been warning people about a secret war on cash for some time. Swiss America has been the nation's trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau, and they want to give you their free report on the secret war on cash. It takes less than 15 minutes to read. All you got to do is call 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency. There's no getting around what the government's trying to do, but you can learn how to protect yourself and your hard-earned assets by calling or texting my name, Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. The report is completely free. Let Swiss America teach you how to save your retirement and finances. 800-289-2646. Just mention Erick, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Greetings. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, I am happy to take your phone call. We've got to talk about, the unpleasantness. I don't like to talk about the story, but it kind of needs to be talked about. The British Parliament, and this is the other reason it doesn't even apply to us, but it's so there's a wow, really, Erickson? Hang on. Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry. It's just one of those days. I'm a little sleep deprived, and we'll get into why I'm sleep deprived here in a little bit. Francis Schaeffer, I just totally, I was about to say Francis, what is his name? Francis Schaeffer. Had to Google the God Who Is There, because in the book, the God Who Is There. One of the anecdotes that Francis Schaeffer, he's an old evangelist, theologian, Francis Schaeffer noted that the secular trends of Europe take about 30 years to wash up on the American shore. There's a profound point, and he's right. So in Great Britain, they have rejected a formal national inquiry into what happened in Rotherham. I want to read for you, and this, y'all, I hate to chase away my audience because I'm in a ratings-based business. But I'm talking about a sensitive subject, and I don't know that you want your kids there. So this is on you. I'm going to read you a little excerpt from the Rotherham inquiry. And I need you to know that in this inquiry, still, they were so politically correct. We're talking about Pakistani men, overwhelmingly Pakistani men, but they use the word Asians. We're not talking about Japanese or Koreans. We're talking about Pakistani men. A police officer dismissed the case of a 12-year-old girl who had been having sex with up to 5 Asian males because he said she had been 100% consensual in every incident. A 12-year-old lacks the capacity to consent. This is another quote from the same report. Fathers who tracked down their daughters and tried to remove them from houses where they were being abused were themselves arrested when police were called to the scene for disrupting the peace. Can you imagine? I want to play for you an exchange in Parliament. Now, you need to understand, you know how Parliament works in Great Britain. They have a Prime Minister's Questions period. I love to watch Prime Minister's Questions, and I love to watch Prime Minister's Questions because it's so rowdy. It's so raucous. I want to play for you this exchange. It's a little bit of an exchange with the leader of the opposition, who is a black female, you should know. The conservative leader in the House is a black female. The prime minister is an uppity white male who used to be in charge of all prosecutions in Great Britain during the Rotherham situation, which is probably why he doesn't want a national inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is being very specific because I have raised this issue. I've raised it in speeches. I've raised it publicly. He knows that as a minister, I would not have been speaking on this specific issue. I was not a Home Office minister, but Mr. Speaker, I will remind him about other victims who came to me, who I did help. The victims of the Tavistock scandal who came to me as a minister. I didn't send them away like his safeguarding minister. I made sure, as his Labour Party were calling me transphobic, that we launched the CAS review, which even his health secretary has accepted. So we do right by victims, Mr. Speaker. The reason why, a national inquiry is important is because this issue is systemic. It has been involving local and national officials, the police, prosecutors, and politicians. He talks about some of the local inquiries, but these interlinked issues cannot be covered by local inquiries alone. In fact, the leaders of the Manchester inquiry resigned because they couldn't get evidence, they couldn't summon witnesses, and not a single person in a position of authority has been held to account. The Prime Minister called for 9 inquiries in the last Parliament. Does he not see that by resisting this one, people will start to worry about a cover-up?
Mr. Speaker, this is an important issue, and we have to focus on the victims and survivors, and it isn't help. This sort of lies and misinformation and slinging of mud doesn't help them one bit. Doesn't help one bit. Mr. Speaker, she raised a question of a victim with me, quite right to, and I accept that victims and survivors are in different places on this. Those that I've spoken to are worried about the delay of a further inquiry. The last inquiry took 7 years. That would take us to 2031.
Okay, I find that one. I'm fascinated by these exchanges in the Parliament. But okay, I want to explain to you why Keir Starmer is a terrible politician. I don't know whether Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, can survive or not. I assume that he can. There's not going to be an election for up to 5 years. They changed the rules on how elections can be held and forced, and he can survive this and move on. But he's not a good politician, and I can tell you why. He's not a good politician because if he were a good politician, he would have set up an inquiry that he could control. And instead, they've allowed a black eye on the Labour Party in Great Britain by having to go through this debate and making it look like they're trying to cover up something when he could have controlled an inquiry and the timetable for it and gotten it done in a timely manner and looked like he was in charge and cared. And instead, what the Prime Minister of Great Britain is doing is killing legislation for a national inquiry and claiming that, well, if we did it, it would take so long. But I want to talk about this as an American about the United States. As I mentioned, Francis Schaeffer wrote that it takes about 30 years for the bad ideas of Europe to wash up on the shore of the United States. But we're kind of seeing that here now, aren't we? Look at the progressives in this country who have decided, because people on the right are opposed to illegal immigration, that they should house the illegal immigrants. And they're doing so at the expense of their own citizens. And now we have a situation in this country where multiple young women have been raped, abused, and or murdered by illegal immigrants in this country. And the Democrats in the United States House of Representatives, the overwhelming majority of them, just voted to be on the side of the illegal immigrant rapists, burglars, and thieves than be on the side of the abused American citizens. So different from the secular progressives in the Labour Party of Britain siding with the rape gangs against the victims. And that, by the way, is what has happened here. The Labour Party in Great Britain is on the side of the rape gangs. The progressives in this country are on the side of the rape gangs as well. They're opposed to Donald Trump rounding up and hauling out the illegal immigrant rapists and gangbangers in this country. Look to New York, where the law enforcement in New York is handcuffed and hamstrung and unable to do their job, and the politicians and the district attorneys, they're on the side of the bad guys on the subway. Daniel Penny became the bad guy, and the bad guy became a victim. Look at how the left couldn't distinguish between Luigi Mangione, who murdered in cold blood the CEO of a healthcare company by shooting him in his back, And they couldn't understand how the right could be outraged about that, but supportive of Daniel Penny, who protected people in the subway from imminent harm from a madman. The left in this country no longer knows right from wrong. They've become reactive to what other people want. They have to find out where Donald Trump stands on an issue to decide what they believe about an issue. They're broken. They're broken. And it needs to be pointed out, it's not just Great Britain. It's not just that it could happen here. It's that it kind of is happening here. And the same thing is happening with progressive politicians in this country. Now, I need to talk to you about something. And I've waited until the end of the show because I try to make the show about the headlines of the news and not me. I have been hesitant to acknowledge that it's true, but it is. And I need to come clean with you. As much as I don't want it to be the case, I have to confess something personal to you that you will be reading about at some point. It is true. I turned 50 years old this year. Good Lord. How am I old? Like officially, like middle age. I don't know. But I have decided no one ever wants to throw me a birthday party. I'm going to throw myself a birthday party. And I'm working on the details. I got an opportunity in Atlanta to rent out the Egyptian Auditorium at the Fox Theater. I'm not sure the date will work because I think the only one available is going to be the weekend of Memorial Day, and I don't know that I can get a lot of people to come the weekend of Memorial Day to an event. So I got to work on the timing. But I have a lot of stories that I never tell on the radio. Some of them I can't tell because there is some language involved, but it's kind of necessary to the story, but I'd get on trouble on the radio. Some of the stories, I just don't think they're appropriate to tell on the radio, but they're all true stories and they're all very funny. It's not stand-up comedy because I'm not a comedian, but I got a lot of stories. They're not safe for radio stories to tell. So what I've decided to do for my 50th birthday is find some sponsors to help me cover the costs. And there's a charity I want to raise money for. So I want to sell some tickets. And all the proceeds go to the charity if I can find the sponsors to help offset the cost of the event. I mean, I got to do the venue and you got to do the chairs and you got to do the AV system. Not an expensive event, but still an event. And invite my listeners and friends and family to come let me just stand on stage and tell you guys all the stories I can't tell because they're not safe for radio. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Confiscate cell phones. No cell phones allowed. And you just come hear me tell you the deeply funny personal stories that can't be told on radio. I think that's going to be a fun idea. My buddy Braden recommended it to me that I should just like rent a comedy hall or something and do this. I'm like, I don't know. I've been looking at venues. I need to find a venue. I don't know that the Fox will work because it's such a spur of the moment thing and they tend to be rented out a year in advance. They're trying to work with me on something. I'm just not sure that date's going to work because that to be so close to Memorial Day weekend. But I'm looking at opportunities. I'd like to do it on a weekend night as opposed to a weeknight because of traffic. So people come may have to be on a weeknight. I don't know, but I'm looking. I'm going to need sponsors, but I'm going to want you to come celebrate my 50th birthday. I cannot believe it's going to be 50 years old, but boy, do I have some stories to tell that I cannot tell on radio. And I've just been mulling over them. I've been staying awake. It's been keeping me up at night. There are so many great stories, so many funny things that have happened in my life. Some of them are very inappropriate to tell on radio, but deeply funny stories that I think you would enjoy. So all of you are welcome to come. It'll have to be in Atlanta for travel and everything else. But stay tuned for more details as I try to find some sponsors and find a venue that can house it, whether it's the Fox or somewhere else. I was thinking there's a small comedy club up in Marietta, Georgia. They can hold about 100 people. But I'm wondering, I think I could fill a bigger space. So we're seeing. In any event, I'll keep you up to date on it. Now, I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity because I'm actually doing an event for them later this month. I got to go to California for them. I'm on their board of advisors, and they have an annual conference coming up I'm going to go speak at. And here's why I like Americans for Prosperity. They're not afraid to be uncompromising in conservative beliefs. Americans for Prosperity has not gone wobbly in the past few years where you hear somebody and think, wait a second, I thought that was conservative. This is a conservative. AFP remains conservative, uncompromisingly so, but in a good way. They put points on the board for common sense conservative reform. They'd love to have you on board with them. They'd love to have you a part of their organization. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org. Sign up with them, americansforprosperity.org. They've got chapters in just about every state of the union. They're growing constantly. They'd love to have you with them. Americansforprosperity.org is the website. Sign up with them, be involved, learn how to be a great communicator for conservative values, and help fight for freedom in this country.
When the world seems crazy, he'll keep you sane. It's the Erick Erickson Show.
Hello, it is Erick Erickson, and I am delighted to be with you. And I need to ask your indulgence, your forgiveness, because I got to be hyper local. I have like 20 stations in the state of Georgia alone, and my flagship station happens to be the biggest talk station in America, and it happens to be in Atlanta, Georgia. And I need to say something to them, just to them. I don't know if it's going to snow or not. I have no idea for Friday whether school's going to be canceled or not. Stop asking. Y'all, if you could see what is happening on my computer screen, I've got 3 big monitors. On the screen to my left is email. And for the last several hours, I have continued to get emails. Do you think it's going to snow? What does Christine Edwards say? What are you hearing behind the scenes? What is in the forecast that's not public? Do you have any idea? And then on the screen on my right is my text messaging app. And on the screen on my right, on my text messaging app, I see my dad's text. How can you be turning 50 when I'm only 49? But I see these text messages from friends. Are the kids going to be out? Is school going to be closed? Do you have any idea? No, I know nothing. Literally, stick your finger in your mouth, get it really wet, and shove it up into the air. Not there, the air. And see how cold it is. And that'll give you a sense of maybe whether or not we have winter or not, which it's cold to me. I literally had to turn a heater on in my studio despite all these lights. It's gotten cold in here. The temperature keeps dropping. Here's my guess. You're going to have, this is Georgia. We're going to have enough snow so that everyone forgets how to drive and gets all the bread and milk before you do. We're not going to have enough snow for you to have any fun. That's the forecast. Enough to make you miserable, not enough to give you any fun. Will school be out on Friday? My guess is, given what happened in 2014, all those years ago, people are still freaked out about it. Yes, probably so. I will have to work nonetheless. The question is, how will I do a national show and probably have to do local coverage on WSB as well? I will take care of that myself. I will figure it out. But all I can tell you is, yes, you're probably going to get a little snow. It's probably going to make your life miserable, and your kids will not have enough to sled. That's it. That's all I know. Go buy your milk and bread right now, because you know some redneck is loading up his cart any minute. Y'all have a great day. I will talk to y'all tomorrow.